Hello, everybody. How are you? What's up? I'm Diego Praderi, and you're watching yet another episode of The Link, the podcast to learn everything about e commerce innovation. Today, with us, we have Sam Hornstein, CEO of Extentech, and Dino Bangiorno, Managing Director of Extentech. We already had an episode about talking about internal efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about how to manage files, how to manage information within NetSuite for every e-commerce business that is running with NetSuite as an ERP. I want to welcome you, Sam and Dino. How are you?
Hey Diego, great to see you again. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Doing great.
Great to have you again in the show, guys. So, while we were preparing this episode of The Link, we've talked a lot about Extentech and how you, what's your purpose and what's the industry that you serve. So we're going to leave that outside of this episode, and we're going to refer our audience to the previous episode that we had with you about operational efficiencies. And we're going to go deep into another topic, and it is how to use NetSuite and how to, I would say, unfold NetSuite to make the best out of it and actually have it working, NetSuite working for you in a much more direct way. And I want to mention one concept that you brought to the table, that it's bring your own storage, right? BYOS. Okay, and I would like for you guys to help me understand and our audience understand what was the need behind, what was the problem behind the solution that you created. So again, I think that I asked you this back on our previous conversation. If I'm an e-commerce merchant, whether I'm a manufacturer or whether I'm a drop shipper, whatever business model I follow in e-commerce, what is the problem that I might be facing that you can help me solve?
Well, I could speak a little bit to that. And as we spoke, last time, after using NetSuite for so many years and recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of things like the file cabinet and some other integrations that are out there, I always wanted something that was just easy and fully integrated, and I didn't want to be beholden to some other limitation, file limitation or storage limitation. I wanted to use my OneDrive. I wanted to use my Amazon or my Azure or one of those things. So, Extend Files was really born out of the challenge of I wanted to be able to drag files into NetSuite and everything else would be taken care of, right? I could know where it's connected, I could share it, I could have it stored somewhere else, and I can pack in a lot of extra information, which is probably the most important value to it. So, you ask about e-commerce and I guess one of the features that we do and we've used in the SCA context as well is uploading files. So within the cart or within the checkout process, you can grab files from your desktop and load them into the cart, which may contain your own personal artwork for at least a lot of our clients. But it could be any document capture that you would need to do through an online experience. So one of the pieces that we made, it just makes it like an FTP replacement, right? You can be in a session, you can drag a file in off your desktop, it creates itself as an extend file, it's associated with the card ID, and then, if the order happens, you've got everything married together and you can hit the ground running with whatever documents or files or images that were loaded in the e-commerce context.
Yeah, and the key thing that Sam pointed out there too is that ability to push files in from an external source. It's something that can be presented publicly to collect those files. So, to his point, whether it would be artwork in order, or maybe even capturing a resale certificate or a tax exempt certificate through an e-commerce platform and capturing that type of documentation that supports the transaction, to be able to gather that as part of that cart checkout process in the SCA context, and then float those files in, and yet at the same time, you're keeping them connected, but you're not clogging up the file cabinet storage with that. You can keep those housed externally.
I see, and I won't let you escape something that you mentioned on a high level. So, what are the limitations of the file cabinet? What are the limitations of NetSuite that, with your solutions, and actually it helped identify a problem that you're solving?
I mean, there's several and things have changed, but I would say that one of the main things that I find to be the most valuable with how this was built is that, this is a native NetSuite record, so you can run save searches on it. You can add information to classify what are you looking at. You can even integrate third-party app things around that particular record. So the file cabinet is great, but if you wanted to run a search and see, what orders was it associated with? Did I add any information? Is it a certain type of file that I've decided to customize my nomenclature for, right? Maybe it's an original AI file. Maybe it's an EPS file. Maybe it's a PDF production proof. Maybe it's a thumbnail or an image. These types of things can all readily be accommodated by the extend files architecture, and then that allows you to run a save search and say, show me all the files for this guy that are AI that I did between these days, and you get all the data back. So it turns typically a document or an image into a robust data record that you can use and associate and reuse into the future. And it doesn't really have any limits. So you could shove, a 2 gigabyte video file through this thing, and it'll store it into your own storage, and the extend file will be right there to represent it. So there's no real capacity limitations either. How about you,
I see.
Dino? You got something?
Yeah, and I think of it from my experience both in the wholesale distribution and also even in the healthcare environment, having worked with what a true document management solution would be like. I mean, I think about extend files as bringing document management like capability within to the NetSuite ecosphere as well. Where regardless of whether you're attaching your files to transactions, entities, items, your own custom records, to be able to have the flexibility in that custom record to create all those connections and uphold all those connections, so as things flow through the system, they can automatically connect to all related records. So no matter where I'm at, I can have access to the key files. If it's at a vendor bill level, I can have it automatically be available at the vendor level as well, or at the vendor payment level. So to be able to have that sort of naturally supported connected architecture in that index record, that extend files record being the center of that universe, again, to Sam's point, being able to write those save searches to locate and classify files, and also to build workflow automations surrounding those files as well, is a huge benefit for a lot of our clients that are looking to streamline and looking to teach NetSuite how to do something so that they don't have to manually do it themselves.
Yeah.
When I was hearing, and it reminds me of clients maybe 3-4 years ago that we had several. You always get those kind of projects, maybe promotional e-commerce projects or similar, that they need to upload images through the site, right? And it was a limitation back in the day that you needed to put certain conditions and criteria for those images. It could only be, PDF and JPEG. It could only be of, 5 megabyte size. Like, those were, back in the day, the limitations. Is it that I'm understanding correctly that those are things of the past with what you're bringing to the table?
Yeah, and
reducing the friction of the experience with the customer, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think one thing also, which we didn't mention, but is one of its primary benefits and fills a gap, is, at least with our vertical, but many verticals are similar, it's all about being able to collaborate around particular files. So you know, you may want to purchase some goods and I want to show you an image or a rendering or a prototype of what that may look like. You know, if I used to work in media, so if somebody were to do an ad buy and somebody in the creative were to produce all of these things, you need to get client approvals on all of this stuff. So with one feature of this is, you know, you can bring in files and you can designate them to be collaborated with. And then what it'll do is it'll generate a link so you can send it to your client or your customer and they can visually review all the files. They can make notes and annotate on the particular files and they could submit right back in and we'll capture that data real time and then we can trigger off workflows like Dino mentioned. So, you know, a very common thing is we'll produce proofs for what your goods are going to look like. We'll put a whole series of images together in a sort of a gallery, and then it will generate a link on the NetSuite record that you can send to the customer, and then they get to review everything, give feedback, even add their own files, and the whole interface of what they're collaborating around is completely customizable. So it can look any way you want, it can behave any way you want, you could add buttons, you could add text. And the real key is once you get feedback and sticking with our theme of saving time and trying to not have emails to follow up and get an email response and go back to a record and say they approved it, we put it all within the audience's control. And then immediately upon their response, we can move it straight into production if they approve it. We can notify internal parties on whether it's been approved or rejected and handle whatever the situation is. So the collaboration piece to me is something very unique that you're allowed to basically just share and get feedback on any files between any amount of parties and really work together as a team to make the final product what you want it to be.
By the way, with that functionality, you're eliminating many other collaboration tools, right? And you're just focusing on the source of truth of NetSuite. That's really impressive. Um, so now I'm here. I know we're focusing in e-commerce, right? But you just mentioned even media agencies can take advantage of this scenario, of this tool. And there's another thing that maybe it's more related to your own vertical, right? To promotional products. I'm guessing, right? I'm assuming that you're gonna get, for instance, image files that are of one use, and then you mainly throw it away. So it wouldn't make and I guess that it's a lot of volume as well, right? So I'm guessing that you don't even want to touch the file cabinet, right? And you want to have your own organizational file organization system separate, right? And more efficient. Even helping customers use the same technology or the same file management system as their own customers, right? So is that the case? Is that the case that your solutions help solve?
Well, one other piece when you say about organization, right? Like NetSuite is very well organized, right? It's got its entities, its vendors, its customers, its employees, its partners. It's got, you know, the items, it's got the transactions. So the beauty of Extend Files and why it's so native and you know embedded is that's the structure, right? Sometimes folks are like, hey, I want to create a folder and then a subfolder and another folder. And I'm like, NetSuite's the folder, subfolder, and sub-subfolder, right? So all you got to do is search for things inside NetSuite and you can find it in global search. You could find it in a save search. You could highlight things. You can do sublists on those records to see whatever's relevant. I mean, in a lot of our demonstrations, you go to the customer and you're looking at all the files underneath and you can just pop a few things into the filter and boom, you find what you're looking for. I even find that to probably be more efficient than if you were to go into some repository searching through folders and clicking your way down into certain things looking for it. So I definitely see that being, you know, one of the major benefits. And like you mentioned, it's really storage agnostic. So, you know, if you, we have a lot of guys who are smaller organizations, they already use Microsoft or Google for their email operations. They want to leverage OneDrive or G Drive, no problem. Then we've got enterprise organizations that, you know, need those uh, larger transfers, or Dino had mentioned there's, you know, certain organizations that push 40 gigabytes of files a week. So there are limitations to some of the commercial or you know, non-commercial things like OneDrive or G Drive, but you know, all in all, I find that the solution, because it's so, we've had plenty of guys start on OneDrive and realize they want to move to a different repository, and all they got to do is flip a switch, and you know, now they're off and running in the new repository. They still have all their old stuff, but now everything new goes into the new. So
Yeah, and then to speak to Diego, to speak to a little bit about your different holding periods, you know, like a lot of transactional files with images might be, like you said, uh, there's less of a security, obviously less of a security issue related around those kind of things typically, because, you know, those files commonly need to be collaborated over with external parties. So, I mean, what we've seen some clients do with our solution too, with those some of those enterprise storages, um, is they'll have a publicly accessible bucket for those transactional files that require the collaboration of artwork and images and stuff, and and that will have, you know, certain security policies applied to it. But then for their internal financial documents, they may have
Okay.
separate storage containers to hold, you know, maybe they want to use signed links and have the files be private, and we can support
You
that.
can
You know,
discriminate
the great thing
how they're
about,
going to use it.
exactly, so we can delineate based on the type of document they're filing where it's going to be stored, you know, which storage container it would be on the back end, or I should say the bucket, if you will, within an S3 context, whether it be private or public, and the retention periods of those may vary as well.
That's
So
correct.
that's really when you get to talking about that document management like capability, when you're referring to you know, retention periods. You know, for financial documents, you want to have them for a longer period of time versus a transactional, you know, artwork stuff might not be as critical for that long retention.
Beautiful. You know what, guys? Like, you're a very tech savvy company, right? And you're tech focused. But I must tell you that in everything that you've taught us that you do, I see a lot of improvement of user experience and reduction of friction for being able to transact with your customers, right? And I think that's huge because it's your solutions are very powerful in different levels, right? Not just the features that brings to the table, but being able to increase that perceived customer experience. I think it's huge. It's you're reducing friction. Like you like to say, Sam, that uh, you shave time and you shave expenses from the solution. So kudos for that because it's not that easy to get both things right.
well, one of the phrases I use, which I find is interesting, is we work really hard to be as lazy as possible. So, you know, the users we expect to not have that capability. And personally, I just want it to be easy, right? I mean, I struggle, I get frustrated. I want it to flow and I want it to do things, and I don't want to spend too much time doing it. So, all the efforts that we put in is really intended for the user to be, not that we want to promote this per se, but you know, it has to be as easy to use and as dummy proof as possible. So you know, that is what's behind everything that we build, and even the automations that we've been talking about are there to reduce. I say be efficient. Another person says, hey, if you're lazy, it can all get done for you as long as you teach NetSuite how to do it all for you. So either way you slice
Ha-
it,
ha-
it's really efficiency oriented.
Have you read the book? And people they're gonna make bully to me because I keep repeating this book. Have you ever read the book? Don't make me think.
I haven't read that book, but I
I'm
already
gonna, I'm gonna,
sounds
I'm
like
gonna,
I
s-
could
I'm
put it
gonna
on my
send it over.
Audible.
I'm gonna recommend. You're gonna love it. It's a book about usability, right? And how like you need to do stuff like people shouldn't be able to think. It should be not intuitive, but instinctively, right? So I guess that you're gonna love that. I'm gonna send the link to you guys.
I consider myself
Okay,
the worst possible users that you can find. So if it's easy to me, then it should be
it's easy
because,
for the rest.
I'm not writing the code on it. I'm just sitting there beating it up to make sure that it's as easy as possible to use.
Great. Okay, guys. So this is going to be for today. I'm going to invite all of our audience. If they don't want to think, if they want to be able to automate their stuff and make things easier for them and for the customers, I want to invite them to get in touch with you guys because Dino and Sam and their team at Extentech, they make complex problems into simple solutions. So kudos for that and congratulations. Guys, can you actually tell our audience where to find you?
Sure, you could find us on the web at extendtech.net. You can also follow us on social media. Look for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Extendtech Team.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, thank you, Dino and Sam, for joining me today. It has been an honor to have you once again, and I hope this is not the last one because there's a lot of things that we need to chat about. You're bringing a lot of value into the NetSuite e-commerce ecosystem, so I hope to see you again. So that's it for for this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, follow us on Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, all of our socials. As always, I'll leave the links, the relevant links in the description. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again in the next episode of The Link E-Commerce Connection. I'm Diego Praderi, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.